of Fantasy Baseball today on Wednesday, March 4th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, we have Breakouts 2.0. We'll take a look back at Breakouts 1.0 as well, let you know what has changed since then. Plus, Scott just wrapped up his Tout Wars draft. We'll break down his team a little bit later on, see how he did. Scott, in 10 seconds or less, how do you feel about the team?
Okay. Surprisingly even-keeled about it.
All right. I like that. Something I know that you won't like, Scott. Breaking news that we had today. Jurickson Profar from your Atlanta Braves is facing a 162-game suspension after testing positive for a PED for a second time. The Players Association plans to challenge the suspension, but I do not believe that that will be successful. So not many great options currently on the roster for the Braves DH spot, but I think long-term, once Sean Murphy returns, I think this is great news for both him and Drake Baldwin. So I guess glass half full for those guys, but if anyone drafted early and you have Jurickson Profar, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm thankful that that's an odd first thing to come out of my mouth. I'm thankful. I'm thankful that it happened before the Tout Wars draft, because that being an OBP league, I probably would have prioritized a high OBP player like Jurickson Profar. But no, I mean, the analysis here is pretty easy. Take him off your draft boards.
Entirely, yeah.
Entirely. He's not. I suppose there is that slim chance of suspension. But it's very slim.
How many times has a player successfully challenged a PED suspension?
I think one, right?
I think it's
Ryan
one,
Braun.
and it was Ryan Braun. And
yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember the details. The details on that are wild and did not make Ryan Braun look great once it all came to light. I saw some speculation that like Profar might try to argue that it was like the same drug, and that he shouldn't be penalized for. It was basically he cheated once, but it was still in his system. Seems pretty unlikely, given the I don't know how long anything stays in your blood, frankly, but like 11 months seems like a really long time. So I think he's probably suspended. I think that's the likeliest outcome.
Now, what is interesting about this, and I don't know that it's so interesting from a fantasy standpoint, but just to have more interesting things to say, is this frees up $15 million for the Braves. They don't have to pay Profar for the time he's suspended.
Lucas Giolito, come on down.
Maybe.
He can't DH.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, eventually maybe Sean Murphy's the big winner for fantasy by absorbing most of those DH at bats. As teams have to cut down their rosters toward the end of spring training, there are going to be I think there are going to be some hitters on the market. The good thing about losing a DH is you could get a player at any position to plug in there. I'm looking at the Orioles with Ryan Mountcastle.
Yeah, I think Ryan
Tyler
Mountcastle is the
O'Neill.
most obvious one.
Of course, Isaac Perez has been the most rumored trade possibility, and I think that's a possibility for the Braves, though I suspect he'll demand a pretty good package. Those Orioles guys I mentioned probably want it. They'd probably be happy to free up the roster spot. And the Orioles aren't the only team in that situation, especially when it comes to light corner infielders. So the replacement for Profar may well not be on the roster yet, and it may be someone who's of minor interest in fantasy. So something to keep an eye on. If you forced me to guess today who's the Braves DH on opening day, I would say Dominic Smith, which isn't very interesting.
Ooh.
But I don't actually think it's going to be Dominic Smith.
Yeah, that is who is penciled in right now on roster resource as the Braves DH. I thought maybe if Jorge Mateo played a little bit, like he's got speed, maybe he can matter in the deepest of roto leagues and category leagues. But
Let's aim a little higher.
Yeah, I think we
let's hope for more than Dominic Smith and Mauricio Dubon and Jorge Mateo.
Dubon's already in the lineup at shortstop.
Yeah. Boy, not an ideal first 3 weeks of spring training for your Atlanta Braves.
And this is a team that I don't think this is just me tainted by fanship here. I think most around the industry would say this team was kind of snake bitten last year. It's not, looks like the snakes are still biting.
Yes. So again, the big news here, Jurickson Profar facing a 162-game suspension after testing positive for a PED for a second time. Let's get into our Breakouts 2.0. And Scott, we will start with you. Favorite name that you added to Breakouts 2.0? Who was it?
It's Nick Lodolo, probably. And I know we've talked about him a fair amount. I think you had him in your Breakouts 1.0, Frank. But not everybody listened to that, and, doesn't hurt to reinforce the idea. I am on board with Nick Lodolo. And the reason I wasn't at first is because, he stayed fairly healthy last season for the first time, 3.33 ERA, 108 whip. But the strikeout rate fell. Barely had a strikeout per inning. In fact, didn't quite have a strikeout per inning. The ground ball rate fell. By those indicators, it looked like Lodolo overachieved. 3.33 ERA, 108 whip. He's tricking you. He's not that good. He's actually losing what made him most interesting. Except, and this is what changed my mind, you look at what happened over his final 12 appearances. Strikeout rate, K per 9 rate went to 10.3 during that time. Started throwing his curveball more. That's obviously his best pitch. Great whiff rate on that. 10.3 K per 9 in those 12 appearances. But even more notable, this was the biggest eye-opener for me. The swinging strike rate in those 12 starts went to 15.7%. As compared to 10.4% previously. So we're talking opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of how much swing and miss Lodolo was generating. Only one pitcher with a minimum of 100 innings eclipsed a 15.7% swinging strike rate last year, and it was Tarek Skubal. So just looking at the full extent of Lodolo's career, the first half where the strikeout numbers were not very good, that's the exception. That's the outlier. The second half was more in line with previous versions of Lodolo we saw, and it was the most recent version of Lodolo we saw. So I think it's legit. And then you look at what else he did last year with the walk rate. What's like 1.7 walks per 9? 1.8. That's 95th percentile. Yeah, I think there's a lot to like here for Nick Lodolo. I don't think it's a stretch to say he could emerge as an ace this year.
That is music to my ear, Scott. He was the pitcher that I loved on Valentine's Day, and his NFBC ADP over the past 2 weeks, again, this is Nick Lodolo we're talking about, is 132. He's going behind Jacob Misiorowski, Tyler Glasnow, Emmett Sheehan, Zach Wheeler, Kevin Gausman, Spencer Strider. I would take him ahead of all those pitchers, personally. But I have him ranked SP26. So
list them off again real quick.
It is Misiorowski, Glasnow, Sheehan, Wheeler, Kevin Gausman, Spencer Strider.
I think I have Glasnow ranked ahead, but it's been happening in drafts that Glasnow is my top pitcher available, and I'm just like, I don't think so for like a couple rounds. So maybe I need to drop him behind Lodolo.
Yep. All right, Chris, let's go over to you. Your favorite name from Breakouts 2.0.
I kind of surprised myself with this one, but I think it's Wyatt Langford, who I was kind of fully expecting to clown on the fantasy community for overrating Wyatt Langford for the third straight draft season. And then when I actually looked into his 2025,
we're going to clown on you, Chris.
I kind of love him. Basically the argument in favor of clowning on the Langford believers is this guy was supposed to be a superstar. And instead, the best we've seen of him is like Randy Arozarena. Like Arozarena was better last season, but you account for the missed time, it's very, very close between the two of them. And like, there's nothing wrong with Randy Arozarena, but that's not a top 50 pick. Randy Arozarena goes, 30 picks, 40 picks later than Wyatt Langford. So when you look at it from that perspective, Wyatt Langford is being overdrafted. But this is one where I think the context is really important because he had an oblique injury last February that limited him for much of spring training.
Sorry, I'm trying to focus
I know,
on the camera. But it looks like I'm just holding up a pen in your face while you're talking.
For anyone who doesn't know, on the video stream, we all have the same camera, I believe, and they all have like an automatic focus. And if you like put your hand up, it'll focus on your hand, and then you pull it back and it doesn't focus on your hand. That's what Frank was doing. He was trying to fix that. It was very funny. It was distracting. I apologize. Anyway, Wyatt Langford. He had the oblique injury last February. He gets into like 12 games in spring training. He gets like 27 plate appearances or something. So he's ready for the season. And then like 10 days into the season, he has another oblique injury. Comes back, has another oblique injury. Later in the season, guess what? A fourth oblique injury. Oblique injuries are like by far the trickiest thing for hitters because it's all rotations. It's all hitting is all in the trunk, folks. Is the trunk what we refer to as the midsection? The midsection. It's the trunk of the human body. And it's really hard to hit when your oblique's not healthy. I don't know if Wyatt Langford's oblique was ever healthy, and he went 22-22 in 134 games with really good quality of contact metrics. He underperformed his expected WOBA by 9 points, 48% hard hit rate, 91.4 mile per hour average exit velocity. Yeah, the strikeout rate's a little high. It was lower as a rookie season. I just look at it all and I say, man, if the floor for Wyatt Langford, when he's beat up with like one of the worst injuries a hitter can try to play through, is Randy Arozarena, I think that guy might be just a star if he's healthy. I think Wyatt Langford's healthy floor is 25-25.
Yep.
And that might not be giving him enough credit. 30-30 is well within the realm of possibility for Wyatt Langford if he stays healthy this season. I still think I'm more excited about Wyatt Langford right now than I have been at any previous point in his career. I think what he did last year with the degree of difficulty was so impressive, and I'm not sure, even with a very healthy price, I think he's like 44 in ADP. I still think there's a ton of room for profit on that one. I think there's a decent chance we're talking about Wyatt Langford as a top 20 player next year.
I'm not disputing the 25-25. I mean, he went 22-22, even missing time last year. It's just the batting average that.
Sure.
I mean, 25-25 with the 240 batting average is basically Randy Arozarena from a 5x5 context. And maybe it's a floor versus ceiling thing, like Wyatt has the ceiling, Wyatt Langford, first name basis. Wyatt Langford has the ceiling beyond that. Maybe that's what you're saying?
Well, I think he's likely to improve on the strikeout rate from last year. It was 20% as a rookie. It was 26% last season. Mm-hmm. Under the hood, nothing really stands out as that alarming.
He has good play.
Like I think he makes good swing decisions. He doesn't swing and miss as much as you would think for someone who had a 26% strikeout rate, 83% zone contact rate. He doesn't chase very much. I think the batting average skills here are healthier than 240. I think it's probably more like 260. And again, I think the ceiling outcomes for Wyatt Langford could get really bonkers with the skills he's shown. Given, I think it's also worth noting, he played 42 games as a professional before making his major league debut, I believe. He played through all the injuries. Like we've been asking an awful lot of Wyatt Langford through his 2 seasons, and he's been disappointing for a top 50 price, but he's still been a very good fantasy option. I think he's going to be great this year.
Yeah. And all the projection systems have him for between a 250 and 259 batting average. So that expectation is 250 to 260, 25-25. That's my kind of median expectation coming into the season. And then there's just a chance. I don't know how much higher the batting average could get, but if the power and speed really takes off, we could be looking at like a 260, 30-30 guy this season with Wyatt Langford. The ADP, as you mentioned, the past 2 weeks is 44 for Wyatt Langford. He's going just ahead of Brent Rooker, Roman Anthony, Jarren Duran, Merrill. I assume you agree with all that. Maybe not Merrill. I know you like him a lot, Chris.
I actually do have Langford ahead of Merrill. I have him ahead of Roman Anthony. Who are some of the others?
Just ahead of Rooker, Roman Anthony, Duran, Merrill, Buxton.
Yeah, I have him ahead of all of those guys.
The next name ahead of
I
him,
do too. I do too, for what it's worth.
the next name ahead of him, well, the two, they're always kind of tied together, is James Wood and PCA, but I don't think any of us are putting Langford that high, right?
No, but I think the median outcomes are pretty similar. I think the high-end outcomes are pretty similar. Maybe just because we've seen the higher-end outcome for PCA in particular as a 5-category guy. But I think both James Wood and PCA have the lower floor than Wyatt Langford. I think Wyatt Langford's floor is actually pretty safe relative to those two guys.
All right, we'll get to my favorite from Breakout 2.0 in just a bit. Before we hit the break, I want to remind people that we will have a live head-to-head points mock draft on Wednesday night. Scott, 9 p.m. Eastern time. I meant to ask you before and I didn't. Is that the time?
I can't remember. I think it's 9:30.
9:30. 9 or 9:30.
I'll tell you after the break. All right, I'll double check.
All righty. So again, you want to come watch a live mock draft? We'll be doing that tomorrow or today when you're listening to this.
9:30.
9:30 p.m. Eastern time. Be there. Also, like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are closing in on 35K, trying to get to 40K by opening day. It is a very lofty goal. I think something crazy would have to happen for us to meet that goal. But you know what? We'll try. That's all we can do. Let's take our first break. We'll be back right after this.
This is why we do this every March.
Major slam! It is a basketball party. It's March! Expect the unexpected!
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball. Today we are talking Breakouts 2.0. And Scott, you stole one of my names, Nick Lodolo. I'm still one of yours. That is Mike Burrows from the Houston Astros. Actually, I just think we're probably just both.
I added him to 2.0 too, yeah.
Yeah, here we go. So he was solid with the Pirates last season. What stands out, over a K per inning, 12% swinging strike rate. That is a very healthy number there for Mike Burrows. He already has a ridiculous changeup. Last year, 219 ex-WOBA, 43% whiff rate on that pitch. And I love the landing spot. Getting to the Houston Astros, they're really smart with pitchers. They usually find a way to get the best out of those guys, and they actively targeted him. They wanted to bring Mike Burrows in. So if they're excited about him, I'm excited about him. He's already made some changes this spring. His slider was up over 3 miles per hour in his first spring start and had 2 of his 7 swinging strikes. And then the slider was up about 2 miles per hour in his second start. Also had 2 of his 5 swinging strikes in that one. He's also throwing his sinker more so far this spring, which feels like a smart decision moving away from his 4-seam fastball. That pitch got hit really hard last year. So this is a deeper name. NFBC ADP over the last 2 weeks is 290. He's going behind Bailey Ober, Joey Cantillo, Sean Manaea, Cody Ponce, Quinn Priester. I like some of those names like Manaea, Ponce, Cantillo. I have some level of interest in, but I would take Mike Burrows ahead of all of them. I probably would take him closer to like the 250 range rather than the 290 where he's going right now. Scott, would you like to add on Mike Burrows?
Yeah, I just think the Astros as an organization have shown an ability to maximize the outcomes of pitchers, to tweak their arsenal in a way that brings the best out of them. Garrett Cole's the most famous example, who they also acquired from the Pirates. It was a long time ago, and some of the organization has changed since then, both organizations. But still, I like what I'm hearing. I mean, Burrow's numbers just at face value from a first-year player were pretty interesting. 394 ERA, 124 WHIP, just over a strikeout per inning. And if they think that bringing in this 2-seam fastball, which he has been throwing a lot this spring, is going to help him have better success against same-handed pitchers, then yeah, it's hard not to buy into that for the price for Mike Burrows.
All right, let's continue on with some more Breakouts 2.0, and Chris, we'll go over to you. You have the
let me mention, it was a similar adjustment. This is part of the reason why I like Mike Burrows too. They made that same sort of adjustment for Hunter Brown against right-handed pitchers, right-handed hitters, more of the 2-seamer, and that's about the time Hunter Brown took off. So there's kind of some.
That's what we're seeing in spring so far from Burrows. Yep.
You didn't already say that, did you?
No, I said he's throwing his sinker more, but I didn't say specifically against right-handed batters.
Yeah,
so.
Hunter Brown, baby.
Thank you for listening, Scott, while I was talking about spreading my love for Mike
I
Burrows.
was trying to figure out who I was going to talk about next. Sorry.
All right, well, we'll give you a little bit more time to figure it out. Chris, we'll go over to you. You have a bunch of names here. Who are some that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, I kind of went with a clean sweep of new names for the most part. Just because when I did Sleepers Breakouts 1.0, I did kind of like some bounce back candidates, and I feel like that's all cheating. Like Jordan Alvarez, and I believe in them, but
The
it doesn't feel
re-breakout.
like, it doesn't feel like it fits the spirit of the discussion. So yes, I still like Jordan Alvarez. The rest of them are all guys we've talked a ton about lately. So I don't know if we need to go in depth on any of them. Jack Caglione. Listen to Tuesday's episode of Fantasy Baseball Today for a ton of discussion about why we all like Jack Caglione a ton.
I will point out, just to add a little color to this, Jack Caglione went the highest I've seen him go in the Tout Wars draft I just completed. Thought I'd have the number ready for you. So it was the 10th pick of round 10, which is let's see. That is 150 or 145.
145, yeah.
145.
Yeah, that's early, but I think I have him like 160 or something right now, so it's not.
The ADP the past 2 weeks is like 195, so 50 picks ahead.
It's going to keep rising.
People are getting excited.
And just to like actually make the point very quickly, premium athlete, high degree prospect, plus power, probably 70 grade power at least, maybe 80. He's really, really good. He hit a baseball 120 miles an hour the other day. That is bonkers stuff. We've talked a ton about Kyle Bradish, probably within the last 3 or 4 episodes as well. But I think the breakout already happened, and it happened in 2024, actually, when his strikeout rate spiked to 32%. Last year, coming back from Tommy John surgery, it was 37%. Throw those 2 seasons together, I think you get 100 strikeouts in like 70 innings. Or something bonkers for Kyle Bradish. So you could legitimately be looking at a 200 strikeout season with 150 or 160 innings. So even the innings limits for Bradish don't concern me all that much. I also just don't really think it's not going to be 140 innings. It might be 160 or 170. But hey, 160 is the new 180, right? You can be a top 15 pitcher with 160 innings. Roman Anthony kind of goes without saying. Elite prospect. Just a question of whether he tweaks the swing. He hit a bomb today.
That home run was amazing.
Yeah. It was one of those ones that was like only 390 feet or something, but he hit it 18 miles high.
But it looked really nice.
Yeah, it was to the pull side, so it looks longer than it is. Ivan Herrera, that's one that even if he's just DH only, which I think he's going to make his first appearance at catcher today, this week sometime. But even if he's DH only, I think Ivan Herrera is good enough to be fantasy relevant as a DH only player. He might be I think his pace last year was 28 homers with a 285 batting average. He's really good. Francisco Alvarez had a 940 OPS after coming back from AAA last season. I think the breakout happened for him. Francisco Alvarez is younger than Drake Baldwin. I believe he is younger than Agustin Ramirez. And he's like maybe a couple of months older than Kyle Teal. Just for some context, because Francisco Alvarez is entering his 5th major league season. He's still really young. There's still room to grow for him. Mackenzie Gore, Scott, I know you hate him, but Mackenzie Gore was one of 13 pitchers last season with an above average whiff rate on 4 different pitches. He missed out on being the only one with 5 by like 0.7 percentage points on his 4-seam fastball. And I think that was just like he faded down the stretch. He's got phenomenal stuff. It's a big park upgrade. I think the Rangers can wring more out of him than the Nationals. I think Mackenzie Gore is going to be very good.
Big defensive upgrade too there.
Defensive upgrade as well. Yeah, I mean, just the surrounding context of Washington versus Texas is so much better this season for Mackenzie Gore. So even if he's just the same guy, I think he'll be better. Luke Keeschel, I think he's a 40 steal guy. I think he's like a 280 batting average guy. I think he's at least a 10 homer, maybe 15 homer guy, and he's going to hit leadoff. So I think we could get some like Trey Turner-esque outcomes out of Luke Keeschel. Probably not as much batting average, but Still a good batting average. Ozzy Albies, this is the one that's more of the re-breakout, but I think people need to be reminded of, one, how good Ozzy Albies has been when he's been healthy over the past few years, and two, how fluky the injuries he's had have been. Over the past 5 seasons, it's 6 IL trips. 5 of them have been for a broken bone of some sort. I think it was a foot, a finger, a wrist, a hand, and one other one. There's a bunch of bones. I don't know, like 50 bones in the human body or something. Who knows? Everybody's different. So the thing is,
I don't know about in that way.
there's no way of knowing how many bones Ozzy Albies has. Medical science hasn't caught up to that. Ozzy Albies, sorry. I just don't think broken bones are like a signal. I don't think they tell us anything about how likely a player is to get hurt moving forward, unless he's got like some kind of unknown calcium deficiency or, I don't know, avian bone syndrome or something.
Maybe he goes swimming with those fish too much.
His bones are soggy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, something like that.
It's possible. Maybe he's got waterlogged bones. But barring something like that, I think Ozzy Albies is more likely to stay healthy this season than your typical injury-prone, quote-unquote, player. After the All-Star break last year, he was basically a 25-20 guy. I think he's just going to bounce back and be really good. And then Ryan Pepiot, his whiff rate on his four-seam fastball dropped from 31% in 2024 to 25% in 2025. I think that's mostly Tropicana Field. I think once he gets that whiff rate back up with the other growth that he's made with the rest of his arsenal, I think we're going to see a big step forward for Ryan Pepiot. I'm expecting a sub-350 ERA, and I think he's going to push for 200 strikeouts this season.
I love it. Yeah. We are the Pep Boys, Chris. And
Pep Boys.
I was
Do
surprised.
everything for less.
Yeah, that is Ryan Pepiot getting an ace for less. He surprisingly, the workload was really good for him last year too. I think he went 6+ innings in like 17 of 30 starts, and
I think he's
more than I expected. So
he's the ace there. Like as far as that goes, I think he's one of the few Tampa Bay pitchers who is not going to get that like Drew Rasmussen treatment. I think you can count on him if he pitches well to go deep.
All right, let's go over to Scott. Breakouts 2.0. Who else do we have here?
I mean, what I'm noticing with these 2.0s is
A lot of overlap.
just even more mind melding.
We've just
Here.
all talked to each other into the same players over the position preview.
I mean,
We
it's more
talk too much.
interesting the ones we don't have in common, like from Chris's list. I'm kind of combining sleepers and breakouts here because the distinction is often thin, and sometimes guy will be on one of will be defined one way for one of us and another. But overall, we just have a positive feeling about him. I was just listening to the names Chris rattled off, and I think the only ones I don't have in common on one of those lists are Mackenzie Gore and Ryan Pepiot. I'm not.
Oh, you have Francisco Alvarez?
No.
Okay, yeah, because I haven't heard you talk about him.
I guess I glossed over that one.
There's a lot of
because
catchers.
He's so high end. But anyway, you want some names for me? I think the ones I'm going to give you are shared by some of you. Let's start with Eury Perez. Eury Perez. I've talked a lot about Kyle Bradish. Chris mentioned it too. And I've talked about how Kyle Bradish is, when I go the thrifty route at starting pitcher, I'm targeting him as an ace. I think if I miss out on Kyle Bradish and I'm going the thrifty route at pitcher, I think Eury Perez could fit that description as well. Because I think I almost think we'd be higher on him, like the drafters would be higher on him if he hadn't come back from Tommy John surgery. Because remember where he left off in 2023 before needing Tommy John surgery the following spring. 2023 as a rookie, Eury Perez had a 3.15 ERA, 1.13 WHIP, 10.7 K per 9 in 19 starts. It was universally understood this is an emerging ace. And a very exciting pick in fantasy that year. That's why it was so devastating when he needed the Tommy John surgery before the season even started. He comes back last year, looks great, looks just like that at first, and then hits the first rough patch of his career. And it brought his ERA to 4.25 for the season. But it seems like the issues he was dealing with was command. It was a very common problem coming back from Tommy John surgery. And he made a mechanical adjustment, very slight one, but a lot of times a slight one is all it takes. Down the stretch, changed the way he positioned his hands and his windup. And over his final 4 starts, he had a swinging strike rate of 16.1%, which, is up there with Tarek Skubal's. ERA during that stretch was 270. His FIP was 109. He was, they were 4 of the most ace-like starts you're going to see from a pitcher, and they're more in line with what we had seen from Eury Perez previously. So I think it was just a little hiccup there, mid-season, first year back from major surgery. Look at his arsenal, still full of pitches with crazy whiff rates. I think this is the year Eury Perez is going to emerge as that ace. And look, the price tag is not crazy low or anything, but it's less than you'd pay for an ace. And so I think Eury Perez is going to outperform it. I also like Gabriel Moreno as a breakout, who, Frank, I think you had in 1.0. I thought about it and just ran out of room. Said I'd save him for 2.0. Here he is, Gabriel Moreno. So he's always had an interesting skill set, former top prospect, great on base skills, good batting eye in general, makes him a great points league play. You just don't need as many catchers in points leagues, so that's a shame. But, there's a lot to like there from Gabriel Moreno to begin with. The biggest problem for him is didn't elevate the ball. And so that made it so he couldn't convert his exit velocities into home runs. So it was a bit limited for fantasy. Well, that changed at the end of last year. He was coming back. I think he was coming back from injury at the time. Not sure what injury it was.
Hand injury?
It was a hand. Yeah, that's right. It was a fracture in his hand. So he comes back, fractured finger, August 22nd. And his fly ball rate spikes during that time. He has the most productive stretch of his career, 311 batting average, 4 homers, and 862 OPS in those 30 games. And it seemed like a conscious choice, just given the timing of it coming out from a long injury layoff. It seems like Gabriel Moreno finally cleared that hurdle that will allow him to tap into power. And he doesn't need much with everything else he's good at. Just a 15 to 20 homer outcome from him makes him look a lot like William Contreras. And, there's so many of these breakout candidates, sleeper candidates at catcher that Gabriel Moreno can get lost in the shuffle. I think in 2 catcher leagues, you need to make him high priority, particularly the OBP leagues. JJ Wetherholt, I've added to Breakouts 2.0. We talked about him a lot yesterday because I think Chris added him to sleepers. But yeah, he is my favorite rookie hitter to target. I would target Connor Griffin over him just because the upside is there. But Wetherholt, I think, is a slam dunk to make the team. He's going to pick up second base eligibility, maybe third base eligibility too, and deliver 5 category production with premium on base skills too, I think. So even in points leagues, like Wetherholt a lot. We talked about.
I mentioned it yesterday, but I want to follow up because Kevin McGonigal hit a bomb today, and I think people might be sleeping on his chances of making the roster because it's like, it's basically they need to decide, is Kevin McGonigal ready, or do we want to go into our last season with Tarek Skubal with Zach McKinstry as shortstop, and it kind of feels like it's just going to be Kevin McGonigal.
Yeah, it's hard, man. I really wanted to take Kevin McGonigal in Tout Wars tonight, and we'll get into that later. But I had already taken Connor Griffin, and it's
it's hard to do both. Yeah,
I was like, Scott's in the Tout Wars Dynasty League. I forgot about
and even so, I ended up taking way too many rookies. But we'll get into that later. Another rookie who I like, Andrew Painter. Now, this is interesting because I wrote this before he had made his first spring start. And of course, it's a tiny sample, so I don't want to draw too much from it. But I didn't see in that spring start what we were expecting to see based on the reports.
It was a little underwhelming.
Keeping an open mind. I think just from the perspective that Andrew Painter seems like an obvious lock for the Phillies rotation. With Zach Wheeler dealing with his issues, they don't really have an alternative. Taiwan Walker's already in himself. So where else are they going to go if they don't give it to Painter? Reportedly, Painter regained the arm slot that he lost coming back from Tommy John surgery. As often happens with injuries, the arm slot sags. And in Painter's case, it cost him a lot of command. It made his fastball less dominant overall. And that led to a 5.26 ERA at AAA. Everyone was expecting him up midseason. He never came up. But the scouting reports remained firm. Trust the process. This is still an elite pitching prospect. And like I said, the reports were sounding good in Phillies camp. Don't know that I don't know that his performance in that tiny sample necessarily backed it up, but I would say the jury's still out on Painter, and just upside relative to expectations for his role. I think it's fair to call him a breakout candidate.
Also, just looking at an MLB.com story by Todd Zalecki after his start, quote, he showed why he will be in the Phillies rotation come opening day. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of doubt about Painter's role. I have some questions about how good he's going to be. The stuff didn't look quite as good, but he also threw like 13 out of 20 fastballs, so we couldn't really see the rest of the arsenal. But the opportunity is going to be there for sure. I think Painter's a very good value.
And whatever we saw in that first start, the Phillies pitching coach said he looks significantly different than this time last year. So what they're seeing behind the scenes is a noticeable change for Andrew Painter. I think targeting him late makes a lot of sense. Let's see if I have anyone else here. We talked about Jordan Lawler on Sleepers. I considered him for Breakouts 2.0. I strongly consider Drake Baldwin because I don't think ADP has adjusted enough for the revelation that Sean Murphy's missing at least a quarter of the season. Because that was what suppressed Drake Baldwin's draft stock early on, going back to the offseason. Why, among all these young upsidey catchers, why Drake Baldwin was ranked modestly is because there were clearer playing time concerns for most than for most of them. There aren't, at least for the first quarter of the season. And by that point, Baldwin, I mean, now the Braves don't have a DH, so it makes it even more likely that Baldwin will have established himself as a true everyday catcher. And the hitting profile here is just so enticing. I can't say much negative about it. Maybe he could elevate the ball better, but in terms of how disciplined he is, the line drives he hits, the way he's built for both power and speed. I'm sorry, not speed. The way he's built for both batting average and power with terrific plate discipline on top of it. Like, Drake Baldwin is the real deal as a hitter, and he happens to play catcher. So I think just the extra volume he's going to get this year, we're going to look back and say we should have invested more in this guy.
Yeah, I remember looking into Drake Baldwin earlier in the offseason, and I don't want to say perfect hitter because he's not perfect, but it was like
close.
Man,
there
is nothing to nitpick here.
It's not like super top end skills, but there's no weaknesses.
Yeah, like
he's like the exit velocity is impressive. The plate discipline is impressive.
He's like a B plus everywhere.
It's mostly just spray angle, and that's not all.
He hits ground balls a little bit too much. But.
Yeah, and that's not all negative either, because high line drive rate, all fields approach. I mean, that helps him deliver the batting average he does. So there's always a trade-off there, how much you want to sacrifice that for more power. I think he has enough power just as it is. But the exit velocities, I think I think you need to go take a second look at those, because they're higher than I think most people realize. And as I said, the plate skills are phenomenal as well.
Yeah, he was the third highest average exit velocity among catchers, and Riley Adams was ahead of him. So we'll just say he was second.
Again, that was Drake Baldwin. We were just
the one concern I have with Gabriel Moreno, and the reason I can't quite get on board, I know you guys both like him a lot, is he started elevating the ball. He's still one of these guys who doesn't hit the ball hard in the air. That's the one concern I have. There's like Eric Hosmer was one of those guys where when he did hit the ball in the air, he didn't do it often enough, and when he did, he didn't hit it hard. Moreno is like 16th in average exit velocity among catchers, 18th actually, just ahead of Salvador Perez. That's very good. Love the 44% hard hit rate. On fly balls and line drives, it's 32nd among catchers in average exit velocity at 92. So he kind of hits the ball harder on the ground than in the air. That's my only concern, but Moreno's price is so cheap. Like the last 2 weeks, it's 170. Okay, he's in the same range as San Francisco Alvarez and Samuel Basayo. I'd probably take those guys just for the upside. Basayo versus Moreno would be a legit question mark.
Here's, and I did kind of say this, but it gets lost in all the other things I said. How much would Moreno's home run output have to improve for him to look a lot like William Contreras? I mean, William Contreras, playing as often as any catcher the last 3 years, 17 home runs, 23 home runs, 17 home runs. So it's a 15 to 20 homer power. And I think Gabriel's plate skills are pretty similar. Obviously, there are differences in provenness and durability.
Yeah, plate appearances for sure.
Yeah, but in terms of upside, what kind of upside Moreno offers, if he can get that home run output up to that 15 to 20 range, not daunting, then he looks really good.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, Chris. I guess the one thing that could mitigate that is if he's just putting the ball in the air more, that there are just more chances for those balls to go out. Although we would just prefer all of them to be hit hard, but it kind of can cancel out just by more volume of balls in the air for Gabriel Moreno. Let's take our final break. When we return, I will quickly run through my Breakouts 2.0. We'll take a look at Scott's Tout Wars team, and then we will wrap up with a recap of Breakouts 1.0. Still a lot to go here. Let's get to it right after this.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today. Chris, what were you dancing to during the break?
Just the song. Just the CBS Sports HQ song.
Yeah, you really like that commercial.
It's a very propulsive beat.
It's it's very upbeat there. All right, are there any names left for me in Breakouts 2.0? I mean, not really. I've got some here. I will quickly mention I also have Jack Caglione and Mick Abel on this list, but we have talked about them a lot over the past 2 days. So the three names we haven't talked about, I have Edward Cabrera, who finally put it together last season. He got the walks down to a respectable range, 8%, 3.1 walks per nine. He changed up the pitch mix, threw his four-seam fastball a lot less. I just think he cannot command that pitch at all. And he threw his sinker and slider more. And obviously the results were much better. He gets ground balls. It's over a strikeout per inning. 12.6% swinging strike rate is a very healthy percentage there for Edward Cabrera. And now he's on the Cubs, which might have the best defense in all of baseball. So we saw last year low BABIPs across the board for that team. Matthew Boyd, Shota Imanaga, Cade Horton. Their defense is so good, it allows you to outperform your peripheral numbers. And so I could see something like that working out here for Edward Cabrera as well. He isn't without his flaws. Obviously, he has never really stayed healthy for a full season, and I have no idea if he will maintain the gains in control. But where his ADP is the past 2 weeks, 188, given the team context and what he showed last season, I think that is a worthwhile gamble there for Edward Cabrera. Next name up here, Scott, one that you will approve of for sure, Jonathan Aranda.
Could I say one thing about Edward Cabrera, because I've been waiting to say it. So the whole breakout case, the whole really case of him sustaining what he did last year is that sinker, right? Commanding it better than the four-seamer, and so fading the four-seamer for it.
Yep.
Cabrera said this spring that he wants his fastball to be a more prominent part of his arsenal. He's already relenting, which was my fear. I actually put him in busts, even though the price is fine, and so I don't know that I should have him in busts, but just in terms of bottom out potential, I think he could revert to being old Cabrera, because he doesn't. I'm not sure has the stick to it to continue with what he did last year that allowed him to have so much success. Stick to itiveness. Isn't there like a way of phrasing that so it becomes like a term?
Yeah.
Stick to itiveness.
Yeah. You're close.
That's a thing people say.
Well, a sinker is a type of fastball, Scott, right? So we could just kind of hope it's the sinker. Unless he said four-seam fastball.
No, because he threw more four-seamers in that start, and he was responding to that. So,
All right,
I don't know.
If it fails early, hopefully he goes.
The price is fine. Like the price, it's low risk for the price. I'm going to remain pessimistic about Edward Cabrera.
I still like the skills and the team context. I really like there as well with Edward Cabrera. Jonathan Aranda's next up here. He had the breakout last season, but it was cut short due to a wrist fracture that kept him out nearly 2 months. But he hit 316, 14 homers, 883 OPS in 106 games. His full season pace, 21 homers, 85 runs, 90 RBI, insane hard hit numbers and expected stats. 291 XBA was 97th percentile, 515 X slug, 93rd percentile. And then he was 93rd percentile or better in xWOBA, average exit velocity, hard hit, launch angle, sweet spot percentage. So Aranda was just an awesome hitter last season, one of the best on a per plate appearance basis. I think some people are probably just worried about him sitting against lefties because he's on the Rays. I guess that's always a possibility, but he was really solid against lefties last year. Hit 274 with a 723 OPS. And I kind of just think he's one of their best hitters on the team. So I feel like he has to play every day. And the ADP the last 2 weeks is 185 for Aranda. He's right next to my guy, South Stewart. I prefer South Stewart, but the price is rising a little bit on Stewart. So if someone likes him even more than I do, I am totally fine with Jonathan Aranda as a corner infielder. Or honestly, if you miss on everything and he's your starting first baseman, I don't think that's crazy.
Might happen in a 15-teamer. First base gets bleak there, as we'll talk about shortly.
Yeah, and let's stick in Tampa Bay here, and I will just quickly point out Griffin Jax. He is one of the best relievers in all of baseball over the past 2 seasons. Here are his numbers and his ranks among qualified relievers. 12.8 K per 9 is 7th best. 28% K minus walk rate, that's 5th best. 18% swinging strike rate is 3rd best. A 2.22 FIP is 4th. And then 4.2 WAR is 3rd best among relievers during that time. Edwin Uceta is dealing with the shoulder injury. He's not going to be ready for opening day. I think Tampa Bay probably still uses or starts with a committee approach, but if Griffin Jax just proves he can do the job, there is a chance that he just lean on him, because the past couple of years, Pete Fairbanks was just the guy for Tampa Bay whenever he was healthy. So I think as good as Jax is, there is a chance that he can run away with that. And I know his price is on the rise too, but honestly, not egregious. Last 2 weeks, it's 185 for Griffin Jax. I think that's
fine.
Still totally fine for him. And again, I just think he's really talented. There's a trio of relievers that I kind of like as breakouts. It's him, Abner Uribe, and although Uribe kind of broke out already, but I think he'll get more saves this year. And Daniel Palencia, same thing for him. I just think he does it over a full season here. So, all right, those are the 3. Anything else you guys would like to add? Cabrera, Griffin Jax, and Aranda?
I'm not a believer in Edward Cabrera, and I'll grant that this might just be one of those cases of, one, I hate pitchers who don't have good control. Like, I can't watch them. It's not true that, because I like Dylan Cease on my fantasy teams this year, but I cannot watch guys like that pitch. I cannot watch Blake Snell. I cannot watch Dylan Cease. I cannot watch Edward Cabrera. And unfortunately, I have watched a lot of Edward Cabrera over the years because he was on the Marlins. So I'm trying to avoid that bias of just, he is a type of pitcher I can't stand watching pitch. I don't know. I want to believe that he can sustain last year or even hit a new level, because even last year the whip was still pretty bad.
123, yeah.
Yeah. You're aiming for more like 115 for your whole staff. So 123 does put you in a little bit of hole. I don't know. I can't quite wrap my mind around a good Edward Cabrera, maybe, is my problem.
It's the sort of, like, I'll take him at his price. I'll take Edward Cabrera at his price. Yeah. And I might need strikeouts at that point, and whatever, I'll take him. But I'm not taking him with a lot of confidence.
I'm not excited about it.
Yeah. I think that's the difference. I am excited. I really do like that team context. I think that defense is so good that it can kind of mask some issues for pitchers. And so, look, the control always going to be an issue. I'm probably expecting around a 120 whip at best, but it could be a sub 350 ERA with 10 K per 9. That would not surprise me with Eury Cabrera this season.
That's true. Cubs fans, leave Scott alone. Come after me. I can take it.
I'm a man.
I'm a man. I'm 37.
And you know what?
You're not a man until you're 40, Chris.
That's fair.
Oh, well, that means I'm not a man yet, unfortunately. Scott just drafted a bunch of men on his Tout Wars team. So
no, I did not draft any 40-year-olds.
Well, no,
you drafted more teenagers than 40-year-olds.
Quite the opposite. Yeah, we're going back to the dynasty team here. So I will pull up the draft board for those watching here on YouTube. I'm going to take away the chat for a little bit just so we can see the draft board here. And Scott was picking 4th overall, so 4th from the left if you want to follow along there. And this is a 15-team Brodo with OBP. I probably should mention Tout Wars. It's an industry expert league. It's been around for a very long time. So again, this is 15-team Brodo with OBP instead of batting average. Scott was picking 4th. We'll get into the specific players and all that in just a bit, but I have to imagine you're pretty excited, Scott. Like, I looked through this entire team and I came away thinking this is a Scott White team.
Interesting that you say that, because I think for the first 3 rounds, it most certainly wasn't. And a little bit of, for the second straight year, my plan for the
you
first.
got Ronald Acuna, and you're a Braves fan. How is this not a Scott team?
Oh, but from a fantasy perspective, Chris is more the Acuna guy, and that's what I'm getting into. Is like for weeks my plan. I knew I had pick 4. I finished 4th last year. I was going to take pick 4, hoping Soto in an OBP league would last to 4, but understanding he probably wouldn't, and I would take Jose Ramirez. That was my plan. And then I got to looking at OBPs. Since I don't work with OBP very much, I like to do a little refresher before I go into the Tout Wars draft, just highlighting players at every position who stand out in OBP, who I should expect to elevate. And I was reminded that 2 of the last 3 years, Ronald Acuna had a 415 OBP, which is insane. I mean, that's even better than Juan Soto had last year. And J-Ram is like 360, not bad, but there's a big difference between those two. So I convinced myself after weeks of assuming Ramirez in the last 10 minutes before the draft, if I don't get Soto, I should probably go Acuna. So that's what I did. Took Ronald Acuna 4th overall, which, by the way, Bobby Witt wasn't even factoring into my plans here. He doesn't walk a lot. He could hit for such a high average that the OBP could still turn out pretty great, as happened 2 years ago. But no, it was between J-Ram and Acuna for me in an OBP league, and I went with Acuna. A little more risk there, but the upside, I mean, I'm sure Chris would have gone with Acuna even if it was an OBP. So
no, I do have it. I have in traditional 5x5, I have Acuna ahead of Soto.
Oh, you don't have ahead of Ramirez?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, anyway.
For
Would you have taken Acuna over Ramirez and OBP?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Ramirez is a good OBP source. Acuna's like, he fluctuates a lot, but the bad years are 360 and the good years are like 410.
Well, the bad years are tied to injury, too.
Yes.
But
I think for his career, it's like 390 or something. Yeah. Acuna's really good.
Yeah. So I went with Acuna. And then in round 2, now here's what kills me, because I had my choices. I had the 4th choice of what pick to take since I finished 4th last year, and I chose the 4th pick, thinking, as I laid it out, hopefully Soto, but probably Ramirez. If I had known Acuna was in this discussion, I would have said 5th. I might have even said 6th, trusting that Witt, saying I could live with Witt instead, just being like, there's not a realistic chance I'm going to get Soto at 4, so let me just take 6. And then I could have gotten Ketel Marte, a great OBP guy in round 2, because he went in that 6th spot, 10th in round 2. Pete Alonso followed with the 11th pick in round 2. And I was forced to take the first round 2 player who I don't think really deserves to be a round 2 player in OBP league, which was frustrating because I didn't have to pick 4th. I would have been thrilled with Ketel Marte or Pete Alonso there. Had to settle for Trey Turner. I felt like Jackson Chourio, barely a 300 OBP, wasn't even in the discussion.
Yeah.
So Turner feels like a pretty underwhelming second round pick. And then in round 3, Manny Machado is who I took. And my own ranking said Matt Olson. I think the categories, Matt Olson made more sense. But my rationale was, man, as thin as third base is in a 12-team league, if it's close enough between Olson and Machado, probably should just take Machado and not have to worry about that very weak position anymore. A lot more first basemen become interesting in OBP versus batting average, or at least a handful more. So maybe it won't be so bad. Olson goes 2 picks later, and first base gets crushed this whole draft. I mean, Sal Stewart goes 86th. That's the kind of way things were going. Like every first baseman going well ahead of ADP. Wow. So as it turns out, I ended up with not just Machado, but Isaac Paredes and Royce Lewis. I ended up with 3 third basemen. And first base, meanwhile, I had to scrape the bottom of the barrel. I don't know if we want to get into that yet or if you want to go through some picks. But that's...
yeah, you did scrape the bottom of the barrel.
I scraped the bottom of the barrel. I guess I'll get into it.
Probably mention who it is. It's Spencer Steer.
It's Spencer Steer, who I think, relatively speaking, is a bargain. Because he's an everyday...
Round 18, by the way.
Yeah.
Round 18.
15-team league.
What pick does that come out to? That's like 250
that sounds like 240 something.
Yeah. Ryan O'Hearn went one spot before. I'd rather have Steer than that. And what's another good example of how first base was getting crushed in this draft? I'm not seeing it immediately here, but trust me when I tell you, people were reaching. I didn't want to reach. I thought I could live with Steer. But really what I like that I did here is, we talked up Bryce Eldridge is any league with a bench, just grab him and wait for him to gain first base eligibility. So I thought this was the perfect scenario to do that. Took him a little ahead of ADP, but since every first baseman was going well ahead of ADP and since the cost was low either way, 19th round, right after Spencer Steer, I took Bryce Eldridge. And then very late in the draft, I took Charlie Condon, who is having a big spring and could be an OBP guy, frankly. So I think I've given myself a chance at first base. Look, I think Steer will be worth starting anyway. Maybe I can move him to the outfield if those other ones pay off.
Spencer Steer is one of those guys where like the OBP is not good. It's maybe bad, but like this is one of those things I've had to wrap my head around. We talk about this a lot with like velocity, but OBP is also like batting average has dropped a lot. But like when I was coming up, when I'm 15 and learning what OBP is, it used to be like 330 was average and like 310 was unplayably bad. Now 315 is pretty much average. It's not far off. So
and
Steer's actually not as terrible as you think. He's actually probably slightly better in OBP than he is batting average.
He walks a lot.
Yeah.
But his batting average is so low that it...
And a wrinkle there is his batting average was dragged down by an awful April where he clearly wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
And I think people are forgetting that with Steer also. But you know what? It's obviously Steer isn't the highlight of the team here. I think he's a fine concession for not wanting to pay the premium for a first baseman. It's just funny how it turned out because I could have taken Olson I took Machado thinking there'd be a headache at third base, and the headache actually ended up first base, which I know has happened to a lot of people in these 15-teamers with the corner infield spot to fill. Other notable picks, Bryce Terang in round 4. So
that's your guy.
Acuna, Turner, Machado, Terang. I'm pretty much covered for steals at that point. Terang should deliver a good OBP. Well, here's another steals guy. Pete Crow Armstrong in round 5. That was one of the big eyebrow raisers. That is the effect of an OBP league. Pete Crow Armstrong delivered probably his best case scenario last year, and it was still sub 300, the OBP league. So you see how much he falls.
Sub 290.
Yeah. Hopefully taking Acuna instead of Jose Ramirez in round 1 will make up for Pete Crow Armstrong's shortcomings there. Jose Altuve is my third outfielder, actually. I don't need him for middle infielder. Connor Griffin.
Yeah.
The steals keep coming, baby.
Yeah, 12th round is very good.
I wrote down pick 177.
Pick 177.
He could be an OBP track.
His ADP the past week was like 150 around there. So
This was the point in the draft when I realized, I'm going to have to go cheap at first base. My first baseman is going to suck. So I need to make a big splash somewhere else. And I decided I'd take the shot on Connor Griffin in the 12th round. You probably want me to touch on pitching a little bit. So obviously I went a little weak there since my first 5 picks were hitters: Acuna, Turner, Machado, Turang, PCA. Jesus Luzardo in round 6, Framber Valdez in round 7. That's my duo. I think it's a fine duo.
Yeah, it's a good pairing of skills.
Josh Hader in round 9, Carlos Estevez in round 10 are my closers. It's hard to be thrilled with either one of those, but I have to put it into context. First, in addition to first base getting slammed in this draft, closer got slammed.
Is this a saves league?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I obviously am not excited about Carlos Estevez, given some of what we've seen this spring. I put him in bust 2.0. Carlos Estevez, where I took him, was after Dennis Santana, Sir Anthony Dominguez, and Griffin Jackson had all gone off the board. So it's like, well, I guess I like him in that context, and just hope that them saying, he went through this last spring anyway. And, he still led the majors in saves. So, Hader and Estevez, I need things to go right there. But in theory, those are 2 closers. And I should be covered for saves if they actually are closers. Trevor Rogers is my number 3 starting pitcher. Brandon Woodruff is my number 4. I got him really late, I felt like. So I don't mind that top 4. Obviously, I didn't get as high end of a pitcher as most teams did. But then I like the way I finished at starting pitcher. Merrill Kelly and Ryan Nelson outside of the first 20 rounds. I think those are good two good ratio stabilizers, innings guys, at a point where most of those were gone. And then Shane Bieber very, very late, just crossing my fingers on him. Jacob Lopez, like the strikeout upside there. Mick Abel, Parker Messick. I think there's a lot of upside there. Obviously, they're not going to hit, but these are bench options for me, and I'm just hoping 1 or 2 of them do.
They're not all going to hit, is what you meant to say.
What did I say?
You said they're not going to hit. And I was going to say, those are bad picks then.
They're not all going to hit. Yeah.
I would hope you have a little more faith in them than that.
Scott, I will say, if they added a category this year for most days on the IL, I think your pitchers would be great.
Well, look, that's going to be true for everybody's team, right? Josh Hader is already dealing with injury. Brandon Woodruff is supposed to be ready for opening day, but he's already dealing with injury. Ryan Nelson, they don't think that injury. Merrill Kelly, they don't think that injury is a big deal, but technically he might begin the year on the IL. Shane Bieber definitely will. And Shane Bieber's the one I'm actually worried about, but I got him so late that I got him almost, I think, close to 300.
And we should mention that there are unlimited IL spots in this.
Yes.
So
it's also
makes sense.
With both Woodruff and Kelly, I think there's been some I don't know if they'll be ready for opening day. In both instances, though, it does sound like the expectation is still not opening day. Like they will not be the opening day starter. And they might have been if they were fine. But the first turn through the rotation is still the expectation for both Brandon Woodruff and Merrill Kelly.
Yeah. So I feel fine about them health-wise. Woodruff doesn't mean he'll stay healthy all year. He rarely has in his career, but he was a bargain where I got him.
13th round. I'm kind of out on Brandon Woodruff a little bit this year, but 13th round in a 15-team league is.
That is he went after Blake Snell, Shane Boz, Mackenzie Gore, Bubba Chandler.
For how long you waited, I think your pitching staff's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it came together okay. Yeah. I do worry a little bit about the innings, but that is a good value.
That's why I tried to stack my bench with upside options. Is just give me contingencies since I'm taking on a little more risk there. Mm-hmm. You may be worried about my power. Obviously, I got a lot of speed up front. Power is becoming an issue. Well, in round 14, close to pick 200, I took Isaac Perez, who may be someone I can slot at first base later. And also a good OBP guy. So I think he was the perfect fit for my team at that point.
Get that man to the Braves. Let's go.
Well, that'd be great, but I think he's going to play enough either way. And then right after him in round 15, I took Dalton Varsho, who I think between those two, Perez and Varsho, I'm going to get 60 home runs, and it may be more. Samuel Basayo was my first catcher in round 16. That's very late. I felt fortunate to get him. I was looking at maybe pairing Basayo and Carter Jensen there at the 16-17 turn.
I was going to ask you, were you freaking out when Carter Jensen went one pick before you?
Because I was a little annoyed. I was going to take Basayo ahead of Jensen, excuse me. But I saw those two still there when catchers like JT Realmuto and Austin Wells were already going off the board, and Kyle Teal, Gabriel Moreno, they went rounds before. It's like I really whiffed here at catcher, and somehow these two stud rookies are going to fall in my lap, and only one of them did. But it would have been great if both did.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anything else we need to talk about here?
I wanted to mention just some of the other kind of rookie upsidey picks that you wound up taking here, along with Connor Griffin.
Yeah, there's a lot of rookies. So Connor Griffin, let me just say, I did not come in with a plan to take a bunch of rookies. Connor Griffin was the one time where I said, I'm going to roll the dice here and hope to score big.
And you didn't reach on any of them.
I didn't reach. 177 is lower than ADP. But
I think in theory, people might look at it and say, well, 4-hitter rookies. I don't know about that. But 2 of them are on the bench, right? It's 4, right?
And maybe
Basayo, I guess 5.
Yeah. Most of them I got for cheap. And the alternative, the safe veteran alternative in every case was a guy who had either major health concerns, playing time concerns, or just performance concerns. So I don't feel like I took on a lot of risk with any of these rookies. I wasn't, obviously they're not slam dunks, but I think the risk reward equation clearly worked out in their favor. So I don't know if you want to get into who they are, Frank, but.
Yeah, we've got Bryce Eldridge at 274, Chase DeLauder at 327. We mentioned McAble at 364, Parker Messick at 387, but then also Charlie Condon at 394. But again, it's, they're all outside the top 270 pretty much. So you're not expecting much from those guys anyway.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if Condon doesn't make the team, I'm probably just dropping him. He was my third to last pick in a very deep league.
I told you to take TJ Rumfield and just lock up the Rockies' first base situation, but
I thought about it, but I had other needs, unfortunately. Chase DeLauder is slotted as my 5th outfielder, and I think he has the job if he stays healthy. Big if. So I may, particularly if Connor Griffin doesn't make the team, I'm going to have to move Jose Altuve to middle infield, and I'll need another outfield. I'll need to pick up another outfielder right away, start him. So there's some pressure on Chase DeLauder there, but I'm strong. I'm strong with my top 4 outfield spots, which is better than I usually am in the outfield coming out of this draft. Deep 5 outfielder league is usually like 2 or even 3 spots that are looking pretty dicey. And this time it's only the 1. So I think I'm ahead of the game there. And you know what? DeLauder might just turn in a great rookie season. Hope springs eternal.
All right. Again, that's Scott's Tout Wars team. 4th pick, Roto with OBP instead of batting average. Let us know in the comments. What do you think about Scott's Tout Wars team? And yeah, are you doing an article on this, Scott? So
I am.
All right.
I am. You'll be able to read all about it. It's usually a very emotional article. Take you through the highs and lows of my drafting experience. So you can check that out, see the full results, not just for my team, but every other team there. Immediate reactions on Twitter are mixed. Some people love it. Some people think I'm a big dummy who doesn't know what he's doing. And I wouldn't have it any other way, frankly.
I think it's rock solid. And I'm not just saying that because, we're here together every day. I do think it's solid. I do think that there's a good amount of injury risk. You took some guys that are already hurt, and then even like Royce Lewis and some names like that. So, yes, there is a lot of risk. But you got all the players that you took at pretty good values. So you can justify it.
this is what gets me. Like the gripes are like, oh, the player you got at this position isn't very good, or oh, the player at this position you got is risky. It's like, my dude, if you could get through a 15-team roto draft without being weak anywhere or taking a risk anywhere,
you're always going to have a weakness in a 15 team. Always.
It's always like, I think there's a quote from Denny Carter from Roto World. It was a tweet where he's talking about like every time you draft a 0 RB team, people are like, "Oh, love your team, but your RBs are weak." And it's like, yeah, that's the whole point. Like that's no, don't worry about it, Scott. The hive mind approves.
yeah.
All right, let's wrap up here with a reminder of our Breakouts 1.0. Are we still in on these guys? What has changed? Again, we wrote those articles back in January, so 5-6 weeks ago now at this point. Scott, well, Chris, you haven't talked in a while. Let's go over to Chris. Who are your Breakouts 1.0? Are you still in?
What's up, guys? Yes, I am still in very much on Luke Keeschel, Ryan Pepio, and Chase Burns. I don't really think I need to make the case for any of them. Chase Burns has like 2 pitches, but they're both 70 grade pitches. And you just look at peak Spencer Strider, Hunter Green. You can make that work. If those 2 pitches are good enough, I think they are for Chase Burns. I don't really think he's not going to be in the rotation either. I think that's a very unlikely outcome. The ones who are not returning for Breakouts 2.0, as I mentioned earlier, I had a lot of turnover. That's mostly just because Breakouts 1.0, I was being a little more generous with my terminology. I was doing some bounce backs, so Yordan Alvarez, Jackson Merrill, Dylan Cease, and Sandy Alcantara. I took them out. I think they'll all be better in 2026 than they were in 2025, so I'm still very much in on those guys. And then the other guys, Samuel Basayo, Jackson Holiday. Holiday, obviously, he's hurt. I don't really feel like I need to pound the table for either of them as breakouts just because they're cheap enough that I don't really feel like the case there is all that necessary. But Basayo, I still very much believe in. That's the one that I want to really make clear that the numbers he put up at AAA as a 20-year-old last year, the plate discipline, I think he was the second best hitter in the International League as a 20-year-old. Or third best, and the 2 guys ahead of him were like Dylan Beavers, who's a legit prospect, but he was like 23 or 24, and the other guy was 27 or something. So I still think Samuel Basayo is going to be a superstar. Like, could be the number 1 catcher in fantasy for the next 5 years. And then Cade Smith, I still love. I don't know, putting a reliever in a bounce back column is kind of boring, right? I was like, or a breakouts column is like, yeah, Cade Smith, he's awesome. You don't really get to like, you don't get to
he's already being drafted like a stud, too.
Well, yeah, he's the number 5 reliever in ADP, and it's also like, I'm not going to do a victory lap on Cade Smith, right? Like, oh, he got 40 saves. Great. That's what he's supposed to do.
But he could be the number 1.
Oh, yeah. No, I do think Cade Smith has number 1 overall reliever upside, for sure. I think his ceiling, if he's used the same way as Emmanuel Clase was, and I think he should be, I think his ceiling's higher than Emmanuel Clase's because he brings 110 strikeout upside with the 40 saves. Emmanuel Clase was more like a 70-80 strikeout guy.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm going to... Nope. Scott, you were trying to talk to us, but you're muted.
I got to interject with something that a commenter pointed out in this Tout Wars league.
Uh-oh.
Mike Gianella didn't draft a starting pitcher.
Interesting.
Isn't there an innings minimum that has to be met? Did that rule get dropped in a way? I mean, Mike Gianella's
very sharp.
Yeah, very sharp.
No, I mean, he would only do that if there was no innings minimum. So my guess is no. Actually, I believe there isn't because I know in the AL and NL only ones, there have been teams that have gone full reliever strategy and have won in Tout Wars in recent years doing that. And my guess is if it's allowed in AL and NL only, then it probably is here as well.
I don't know that it should be allowed. Okay, well, that's interesting. I mean, Mike Gianella, I think he won 2 years ago. I've played with him for a long time. He's always competitive.
Great player.
Yeah. That's okay. Worth pointing that out. I'll point that out in the article. He took Andres Munoz in round 4, Pete Fairbanks in round 7, Ryan Walker in round 11.
And just hammered middle relievers with his like last 6 picks or something. Yeah.
Robert Suarez, Moreno, Grant Taylor, Jason Adam, Tanner Scott, Phil Maton.
So he better have good hitting.
Yeah, I agree.
Took some risky hitters. I don't know. We'll see.
All right.
Strategy.
I am going to quickly list off some of my names from Breakouts 1.0 here and let you know what has changed. I have Ben Rice, Roman Anthony, Kyle Bradish, Cam Schlittler, Trey Savage, Royce Lewis, Mackenzie Gore, Sal Stewart, Braxton Ashcraft, and Chad Patrick. So Bradish, we talked about earlier, he will have some kind of innings limit. I lowered him a touch, but I'm still in. I have him ranked around SP20. Cam Schlittler had the mid-back tightness, but seems like all is well. He has been facing hitters. Expected to be ready for the start of the season. Still in there. Trey Savage, he's being eased into action. The Blue Jays plan to slow play him early in the season, keep the innings down a little bit so that he could pitch further into the year and obviously into the postseason as well. I think I'm going to lower him a bit in the rankings, but the price was already so low that I think it's still fine to be in on Trey Savage. Royce Lewis, he was scratched last week with right side tightness, but he returned here on Tuesday and picked up another stolen base. I think that's like 2 in 4 or 5 games. And
he had like 11 in the second half last year.
Yeah. And they all came in like the final 30 games or something like
Royce Lewis just cannot be normal. Remember he had like that 3-week stretch where every hit was a grand slam.
Dare to be different, Chris.
And like, yeah, he's just a weird, but like, man, what if he does it all? What if he does all of the stuff at the same time?
Yeah, and the last name I have here on the list, the price for Braxton Ashcraft is going up. The ADP is 272 in the last 2 weeks, but I am still all over that, especially in head-to-head points leagues as a sparp there with Braxton Ashcraft. All right, Scott, bring us home. Remind us of your Breakouts 1.0 and what, if anything, has changed.
So Edwin Uceta has been removed. That's what's changed. I don't think he's the front runner to close.
Reasonable.
He may be more of a sleeper now, but because it doesn't sound like he's going to begin on the IL, at least at last I saw. But it's pretty worrisome, the injury he has. Ben Rice does remain, and I think the fervor has cooled a little bit. I think you can get him back in that 60 to 70 range, certainly in on platforms outside of NFBC. And I actually took him as my first baseman in an AL only league. I think if you're in one of those leagues where first base gets drained, that's something to think about. As crazy as it sounds, catcher being so deep, maybe Ben Rice, you draft him, you end up playing him more at first base. If he's an everyday player, it could work. Kyle Bradish, I think he's a low-key Cy Young contender. The last full healthy season he had, he finished 4th in AL Cy Young voting, and he's only looked better in the limited chances since then. Agustin Ramirez, boy, catcher is so deep. He could stand to pull the ball, to elevate the ball to his pull side more, and just underperformed all his expected stats last year and was still really good. Plus, maybe the only catcher who could steal you some bases. Chase Burns, this was actually
could steal like 20, 25 bases.
Chase Burns, this was one of my regrets from Tout Wars, actually, and a signal that I need to move Chase Burns up, because I could have taken him as my number 3 pitcher in round 9, where I took Josh Hader. I suppose I might have had saves problems if I did that, but I think I would have rather taken Burns given the risks associated with Hader. He might be the best bat misser in baseball, honestly. He already has more double-digit strikeout efforts in his career than Paul Skeens does. And Chase Burns has only made 8 starts.
And they were basically in 4 consecutive starts.
Yeah. Gavin Williams, top prospect pedigree. Looks like he came into his own in the second half. Was overachieving in the first half, and I think that sticks out in the minds of a lot of people, like, fade this guy. He got better in the second half in terms of bat missing, in terms of control. Made some tweaks to his arsenal that back it up. I think everyone will recognize he's great this year. Noel V. Marte, if he plays enough, if he can avoid the slump we saw in September, I think there's 5 category production there. And he's third base eligible, which helps. Probably gets too often people reach for him because of that, I think. But in theory, I like the upside for Noel V. Marte. Emmett Sheehan, great bat missing potential there. And I think the Dodgers need him in the rotation more than they ever have before. Avon Herrera, Chris talked about him. Bubba Chandler, feel like that's pretty obvious. Best pitching prospect in baseball. Has had control issues in 2 starts this spring, and that's concerning given how his stint at AAA went, but I'm not going to overreact to that yet. Jonathan Aranda, love him, have loved him for years. I'm glad you're coming around, Frank.
Yeah.
Dalton Varsho, 162 game pace last year of 46 home runs. His exit velocities jumped by like 3 miles per hour. And he started every game of the postseason for the Blue Jays. So I don't even think there's a platoon concern there. I think Varsho's under the radar, big power bat. And that's it. That's everybody.
All right. We are going to wrap there. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning into Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back again tomorrow, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, live mock draft. Be there. Bye-bye.